Every time a major conflict breaks out somewhere in the world, the same fear appears almost immediately. Is this the start of World War III? You see the question online, in headlines, and in conversations everywhere. But in reality, starting a world war today is much harder than most people think. And the reason has a lot to do with how modern alliances, nuclear weapons, and global economics actually work. To understand what could start another world war, it helps to look at what caused the first two. World War I began in 1914 after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. That event triggered a chain reaction of military alliances. Countries that had promised to defend one another were suddenly pulled into the conflict. Within weeks, most of Europe was at war. World War II followed a different path. It grew out of aggressive territorial expansion by Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, and Fascist Italy. Both wars had something in common. Large countries were willing to mobilize millions of soldiers and fight massive conventional wars against other major powers. Today, the global situation is very different. The biggest reason a third world war hasn't happened since 1945 is nuclear weapons. Several major powers, including the United States, Russia, China, the United Kingdom, and France, possess nuclear arsenals capable of destroying entire cities. Because of this, a full-scale war between nuclear powers carries the risk of mutually assured destruction. In other words, both sides could lose everything. This creates an extremely powerful deterrent. Even during the Cold War, when tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union were at their highest, leaders on both sides avoided direct military conflict. Instead, most modern conflicts happen through proxy wars, economic pressure, and regional disputes, rather than direct confrontation between superpowers. Another factor is how modern alliances operate. Organizations like North Atlantic Treaty Organization, better known as NATO, are designed to deter aggression by making it clear that attacking one member could mean confronting many countries at once. But that doesn't necessarily mean automatic global war. Most alliances include political processes, negotiations, and strategic caution before any military response happens. Because of the enormous risks involved, countries tend to avoid actions that could accidentally trigger a large-scale escalation. Instead, conflicts are often contained regionally. This is why wars in places like Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan did not expand into global conflicts involving all major powers. For a true world war to begin today, several things would likely need to happen at the same time. First, a direct military conflict between major powers, such as the United States, China, or Russia. Second, that conflict would need to activate major alliances and draw multiple countries into the fighting. And third, political leaders would have to decide that the stakes were worth risking a massive escalation. This combination is extremely rare. Because once several nuclear-armed countries are involved, the consequences could be catastrophic. For that reason, most global powers spend enormous effort trying to prevent exactly that kind of scenario. So could World War III happen? Technically, yes. History shows that global conflicts are possible, but modern nuclear deterrence, international alliances, and economic interdependence all make large-scale wars between major powers far less likely than they once were. Which means that while smaller regional conflicts will probably continue, a true world war remains something most countries are strongly motivated to avoid. Understanding how these systems work helps explain why the world often feels closer to catastrophe than it actually is. This is worth knowing. Follow for more insight on how today's world actually works and why it matters.